Hey guys, how we doing today? Today we are going to discuss the history of the Lemp family. There is a place here in St. Louis called the Lemp Mansion. It has been there since the mid 1800s. It is now arguably one of the 10 most haunted places in the country. After years of tragedy and suicide, this place attracts paranormal investigators year-round, as well as normal folks like myself who visited there just over this past weekend. The Lemps are widely known for their homemade beer that was born in the 1800s. That later became known as Falstaff and is still sold to this day. Now they're more widely recognized as the family who suffered unimaginable tragedies almost seemingly year after year for 50 years straight. According to a lot of folks, they're still taking up residency at the Lemp Mansion. They grace guests, employees, and paranormal investigators with their presence quite often. And to understand how we got to the point of these hauntings, we really need to look back at the family history, which by most accounts is a true rags to riches story. But by the end of it, I guarantee you, it's going to make your family look normal. Like, seriously. I mean, it is an absolute tragic story, and it's going to be long, and you might want to take notes. So here we go. The Lemp family legacy began in 1838 when Adam Lemp settled here in St. Louis just 2 years after coming from Germany. He quickly opened up a grocery store and began selling his own homemade beer. The light golden lager was new to the area that was mainly used to dark beer that was sold at the time. After just 2 years, his homemade beer became so popular that he closed his grocery store and opened up a small brewery. The original Lemp Brewery sat on a piece of what's now the Arch Grounds in downtown St. Louis on the banks of the Mississippi River. Lemp's Western Brewing Company became so popular it controlled the St. Louis beer market and was the largest in the city. Adam Lemp died in 1962. Get the hell out of town. Adam Lemp died in 1862, and his son William Sr. took over the business. He almost immediately began a massive expansion in order to keep up with demand. By the time the expansion was complete, the brewery itself took up 5 city blocks. The brewery was the largest in the city, and the family became local royalty. Everybody wanted to be with the Lemps. Everybody knew who they were. They were the it family. In 1876, William Lemp Sr. bought a home from his father-in-law that's now known as the Lemp Mansion. He converted the 33-room estate into this Victorian showplace with all sorts of amenities that were not seen in the area until years later. From the mansion, a tunnel was dug underground through the cave systems that would connect the house to the brewery so they could go back and forth as they pleased. So William Sr. and his wife Julia had a total of 9 children between the years of 1862 and 1893. So in the midst of all their family success, everything seems to be absolutely going their way. Unfortunately, the turn of the century is going to change their family legacy forever. So William Jr. and Louis Lemp were appointed to executive positions by their dad when the business was incorporated in 1892. Despite their promotions, it was made very clear by William Sr. that his golden child Frederick was to take over the business. He and Frederick had a very close relationship. Frederick was the one who was business savvy, and his dad was confident that he would be able to successfully run the brewery. In 1901, Frederick took some time off work because he wasn't feeling very well, and just as his health was starting to improve, he died suddenly at the age of 28. The family was devastated, but William Sr. took it the hardest. Over the next few years, William Sr.'s physical and mental health was steadily declining. Sadly, in 1904, William Sr. chose to take his own life in his bedroom at the Lemp Mansion. Just a year later, his wife Julia was diagnosed with. In March of 1906, she passed away in the same exact bedroom where her husband had died just 2 years earlier. After his parents' death, William Jr. and his wife Lillian inherited the family business. At that time, all of their assets were estimated at $15 million. So we know that William Jr. was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and now Lillian, we find out, is an heiress to a railroad company, so they're both used to living the lavish lifestyle. Not long after they gained access to this inheritance, they were both running around town, just making it rain, living their best life, just doing whatever the hell they wanted. Whoa, hello. There we go. Tune in Tokyo. They were spending ridiculous amounts of money on clothing and art and their carriages and all sorts of things that were absolutely unnecessary to keep the business rolling. During this time is when Lillian became known as the Lavender Lady. She filled her closets and jewelry boxes with everything lavender she could get her hands on. It's also said that she made sure that her carriages and horses were equipped with lavender accessories. This time they also built a huge theater, even like a swimming pool, like a spa type of thing, and even a bar in the caves below the home. So Lillian's out painting the town lavender. And William is somewhat of a businessman during the day, but an absolute good time Charlie at night. He held these magnificent parties down in the caves where he would bring prostitutes for his friends, offer them free beer. They could just do whatever they wanted. At that time, there was actually a spiral staircase on Cherokee Street where people could access the bar down in the caves just from the sidewalk. Easy peasy. It's during this time that it's believed that William fathered a son to one of the prostitutes. Not a good look. The rumors say that the boy was kept in the mansion attic. Servants said that the boy was born with what we now know as Down syndrome, and to keep up appearances, the boy needed to remain hidden, which is bullshit. So Lillian grew tired of William's crap and filed for divorce in 1908, stating desertion and mistreatment. So in return, William accused Lillian of Victorian female infractions such as cursing and wearing lavender as a ploy to gain attention. Shame, 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 Lillian. Everybody knows your name. So the news of the divorce spread like wildfire. It was like the biggest news to ever hit the city at the time. The divorce proceedings started in 1909 and people flocked to the courthouse to get one of those seats. Similar to like what we saw with the O.J. Simpson trial. If YouTube and Robin channels were around at that time, they would be spilling tea like crazy on the circus this was. After 4 years, the divorce was granted and William Jr. lost custody of his son, William III. Now Lillian almost lost custody of her son because there was a picture that showed up in court of her smoking a cigarette. I mean, this woman was all about bringing up some Victorian female infractions. She was just doing her, girl, you do what you gotta do. So 6 years after his divorce in 1909, William Jr. found himself remarried and suddenly facing prohibition. Now, instead of taking action to find a way to keep the brewery open like Anheuser-Busch did by selling non-alcoholic beer and other things, he basically just sat around hoping that Congress wouldn't pass that. Well, unfortunately for him, they did, and prohibition went into effect in January 1920. So ultimately, he decided since he and his family were already wealthy, he would just shut down the brewery and just live the best life he could with the money they already had. So one day the employees show up to work to find the doors and gates locked. No more job, no warning, no nothing. Adios. I mean, what an ass. So shortly after the business was so rudely shut down, William Jr.'s sister Elsa was going through some reconciliation of sort with her ex-husband. They had gotten divorced and now they're trying to get back together. It's this tennis match of crazy relationship. So one night she's battling insomnia, and by the end of the night she had chosen to take her own life. When William Jr. heard what had happened to her, he said, well, that's the Lemp family for you. And that's a direct quote. I mean, he was like, this shit happens all the time, we're used to it, you know. But there's speculation that her estranged husband might have actually shot her. So a lot of people debate that, but either way, Elsa passed away in March of 1920. So just 2 years later, William Jr. sold the business for huge losses. I'm talking 8 cents on the dollar at best. What was once a multi-million-dollar fortune was sold for $750,000. That gave away all the property, all the logos, everything that went with that brewery was gone for under $1 million. The only thing that they maintained was the home. So after the sale, William Jr. fell into a pretty dark spot. Rightfully so. Just saying. He was nervous, erratic, he was all over the map, and he often complained of ill health. Just 6 months after the sale of all of that property and all of that family history, William Jr. chose to take his life on the first floor in his office of the Lemp Mansion. When his son William III found him, he said, "You knew I knew it. We all knew this was coming." William Jr. passed away on December 29th, 1922, becoming the third Lemp family member to die of suicide. So remember how we talked about the illegitimate son who supposedly had to live in the mansion because he had Down syndrome? He is now known as Zeke. He has a horrible nickname that I will not say, but you are welcome to look it up. Apparently, he died in the mansion falling down a flight of stairs. Now, there are reports that this happened during his teenage years, and there's also reports that this happened when he was around the age of 30. Either way, he passed away in the home. Shady shit. Now, William III, William Jr.'s only other son, passed away from a heart attack at the age of 42. So quickly, this family tree is dying out one by one by one. It is horrific. In 1929, William Jr.'s brother Charles moved back into the mansion. He had left the family home in 1913 to explore, other opportunities and just be himself. Now, Charles was a strange bird. He had extreme OCD and was a huge germaphobe. He wore gloves at all times and would only take them off when he was washing his hands. In the early 1940s, he sent a letter to a local funeral home giving them very specific and explicit details of what they're to do in the event of his death. He requested not to be bathed or changed prior to his cremation. He told them he wanted no funeral service and no published obituary. Just do it and be done with it. Less than a decade later, Charles became the fourth Lemp family member to commit suicide. Charles was discovered on May 10th of 1949. Prior to taking his own life, he did take the life of his own dog in the basement of the Lemp Mansion. Charles was the last Lemp family member to occupy the home. After that, no more Lemps lived in the mansion. At this time, Edwin Lemp was the last surviving child of William Sr. He lived until the ripe old age of 90 and passed away in 1970. He had left the family home pretty early on to kind of live his own life and do his own thing. He moved to a suburb in St. Louis and pretty much stayed there his whole life. Prior to Edwin's death, he made some pretty explicit requests when he did pass away. He was a lifelong collector of different artifacts and artworks from all of his worldly travels. Being the sole survivor of the Lemp family, he inherited all of their luxurious items and all the heirlooms from the Lemp estate. With no explanation given, he requested specifically that everything be burned. He wanted nothing left. So upon his death in 1970, his butler started a fire and let everything turn to ash. His butler burned all the valuable artwork, all the heirlooms, and even a bunch of documents. So all of these things that were so precious at one time literally just went up in flames. Now, despite no explanation being given, it is widely believed that Edwin wanted everything burned, so there was no way that the family curse could live on in any of these heirlooms. I guess he thought he was doing everybody a favor, and maybe he did, who knows. So now we're going to fast forward to the early 70s. Now, because of some of the crazy activity that was taking place while it was a boarding house, it was basically abandoned and became a flop house of sorts. In 1975, Richard Pointer and his family purchased the property with the intention to turn it into a restaurant and bed and breakfast. Immediately, the new owners and construction workers were met with all sorts of strange activity. They were seeing things, they were hearing things, tools were disappearing. Many employees and construction workers walked off the job and never returned. They're like, deuces, I'm out, good luck to you. So now we are getting into the actual paranormal activity of the property. Now, while that activity dates back to the 1950s, the paranormal activity we're going to talk about dates from the 70s to the present day. So we're going to wind up part one here, because if we put both the history and the paranormal activity into one video, this could be 3 hours long, easy peasy lemon squeeze. So now that we've covered a lot of the family history, it's going to be easier to understand the paranormal activity that takes place today. The Lemp family history is a lot to digest, and I appreciate you taking the time to learn about their story. Now, while all of them have passed on, their story is far, far, far from over. I'll see you guys in part 2, where we'll learn about how their spirits live on, and we'll talk about some of the experiences many people have had there. I hope wherever this video finds you, you're doing well and having the best day ever. You know, big thumbs up for more paranormal stories, and please be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you to be, subjected to my randomness. So my husband and I did visit the Lemp Mansion over the weekend. We enjoyed a fabulous meal there. And did we have any paranormal experiences? I don't know. You'll have to tune into part 2 to find out. Hope you guys are having a great day. I love you all. Peace out, Girl Scouts.
At one point, I had brought a little teddy bear from home. I was doing a film with a group called the Booth Brothers. And I set the teddy bear down on the stairs. And we went about, and they were interviewing me, and they were talking, and I looked up on those stairs, and the teddy bear was up in the air, swaying back and forth, as if a little boy was playing. The house was built in 1868. Charles Lemp died in 1949. Charles was an elderly man when he committed suicide. He was suffering. He had bone cancer and crippling arthritis, and he had lost probably a will to go on. He also, if you believe in the haunted aspect of this house, and he was affected by all the spirits that are here. These are all my theories, There are 9 identifiable spirits here in this house, and one of them is a spirit that I used to call the Stinky Man. The first time I encountered him, though, he told me to get out, my house, get out, and stuff like that. And I didn't go, so he wasn't too pleased with me. What draws me now is the 3rd floor. And the 3rd floor, because there is a spirit there that I feel such empathy for. He's a little boy. He was part of the Lemp family. And he hides up there. He's very scared, afraid of people. Now these windows are on the floor, as you can see, which were ideal for a little boy to play because he could people watch. His favorite thing to people watch. And then if he'd see a kid, he'd tap on the glass like, oh, look at me, play with me. When they did look up and see him, they called him names and would still stick to this day. Unfortunately, particularly in this area, when I encounter the room where I know that Zeke is hiding, can be very sad and it weighs on your shoulders, almost like a weight has been, that you sink a little bit when you come into this room. Now some of the other rooms you go into, you might feel altogether different. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. I went, look at that, because my teddy bear from home, it wasn't a magic teddy bear. I brought it for Zeke. I thought he might like to play with it, and I just set it there. It was up in the air like a little kid was going, wee, 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 just like that. So that was a moment that was very sad, because Zeke is here. He's a boy that is so challenged that I cannot reach him to help him cross over. And he is looking for his mother. Being skeptical, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. I think there's room for everybody's, their opinions, and it's okay to be a skeptic.